Billionaire stormed into his ex-wife's home in fury, but froze when he spotted her cradling a newborn. "You were never good enough for this life." The billionaire's words shattered his wife as storm clouds gathered outside their penthouse. She left that night carrying 2 suitcases and a secret. She was 3 weeks pregnant with his daughter. 6 months later, he discovered the truth. The affair never happened. The photos were lies, and the woman he destroyed was innocent. Now he's standing in the rain outside her door, about to see the child he never knew existed. Hi, my wonderful friends. Welcome to Mr. William Chronicles, where powerful stories reveal life's deepest truths. If you're new here, show some love and hit that subscribe button. Let me speak a blessing over you. May you find the strength to forgive those who wounded you deepest, the courage to rebuild after betrayal breaks you, and the wisdom to recognize that real love isn't perfect. It's choosing each other even after everything falls apart. If you've ever been falsely accused of something that destroyed your life, or if you've made a mistake so terrible you thought forgiveness was impossible, hit that like button and drop a comment below. This is the story of Harper Davis, a woman who endured prejudice, survived betrayal, and raised a daughter alone, while the man who should have stood beside her drowned in regret. This is about Nolan Wright, a billionaire who chose pride over truth and spent months learning what love actually costs. And this is about Marin, a baby girl who became the bridge that brought her broken parents back together, teaching them that some families are worth fighting for. The rain hit like bullets against the windshield as Nolan Wright's Audi tore through the night, hydroplaning on curves that should have terrified him. But fear had a new address now. It lived in the possibility that he'd destroyed everything that mattered. A baby. Harper has a baby. The words played on loop, each repetition a fresh knife wound. His knuckles were bone white on the leather steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. 6 months. She'd been gone 6 months, and in that time, she'd carried his child, their child alone. If the timeline was right, God, please let it be right. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty highway ahead, and Nolan's mind dragged him back 3 years to the night that changed everything. The charity auction had been insufferable until he saw her. Harper Davis stood beneath the gallery's vaulted ceiling in a simple black dress that somehow outshone every designer gown in the room. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. That's what stopped his heart. While socialites posed and preened, Harper studied a contemporary sculpture with genuine fascination, her finger tracing the air an inch from its surface, as if touching it through sheer will. Nolan abandoned his champagne and the boring conversation about market projections. He moved through the crowd like a man possessed. "You're allowed to touch it," he said, stepping beside her. She glanced up, and those amber eyes hit him like whiskey, smooth, burning, intoxicating. "I know, but anticipation makes it better, doesn't it?" The double meaning wasn't lost on him. Neither was the slight smile playing at her lips. Nolan Wright. He extended his hand. "I know who you are." She took it anyway. Her palm was warm, her grip confident. "Harper Davis. I designed the building across the street." "The Morrison Complex?" He didn't release her hand. "That's yours." Surprised. Challenge sparked in her gaze. Impressed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Have dinner with me. I don't date clients. I'm not a client. Yet." But she was smiling fully now, and Nolan felt something shift in his chest, a lock turning, a door opening. They talked until the auction ended. Then they walked the city streets until dawn, her heels dangling from her fingers, his jacket wrapped around her shoulders. By sunrise, he'd kissed her against a brick wall in an alley that smelled like rain and coffee, and she'd kissed him back like she was claiming him. 3 months later, they stood in a courthouse, her hand trembling in his as she said, "I do," to a room empty of his family. His mother, Vivian, had made her position crystal clear. "That woman is beneath us, Nolan. She's after your money, your name. Don't be naive." His father, Richard, had simply stopped taking his calls. But Nolan didn't care. Not when Harper looked at him like he hung the moon. Not when she laughed at his terrible jokes and challenged his assumptions and fit against him like she was carved from his rib. The first family dinner after the wedding was warfare disguised as civility. So Harper, Vivian's voice could have frosted glass. Nolan tells us you're an architect. How quaint. Harper's fingers tightened on her wine glass, but her smile never wavered. I love what I do. And how did you two meet again? Richard didn't look up from his plate. A charity auction, Nolan interjected, his hand finding Harper's thigh under the table, a lifeline. How convenient. Vivian's implication was poison-dipped. Harper excused herself to the powder room. Nolan found her 10 minutes later, staring at her reflection, eyes glassy, with unshed tears. We can leave, he whispered, pulling her against his chest. I'm fine. But her voice cracked. You're not. They're cruel, and I'm sorry. Don't apologize for them. She turned in his arms, her palms framing his face. I knew what I was signing up for. Did you? His throat tightened. Because I'm starting to think I didn't. She kissed him then, deep, desperate. A kiss that tasted like defiance and devotion. Take me home, she breathed against his mouth. Home was their penthouse sanctuary. Behind those doors, the world's opinions evaporated. Nolan worshipped her in the darkness, his hands mapping the curve of her waist, the dip of her spine, the soft gasp that escaped when he kissed the hollow of her throat. She arched into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, her whispered name for him a prayer and a demand. You're mine, he'd murmur against her collarbone, his teeth grazing skin. Only mine. Nothing else matters. Nothing else, she'd echo, and for those stolen hours it was true. Their bodies learned a language words couldn't touch. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss a vow. In the twisted sheets and sweat-slick skin, they built a world where love was enough. But outside that bedroom, reality waited with sharpened claws. For 2 years, Harper endured. She smiled through gallery openings where his colleagues called her Nolan's little project. She swallowed rage when Vivian critiqued her dress, her hair, her career, her existence. She pretended not to hear the whispers. Gold digger, social climber, not one of us. And Nolan, God help him. He defended her in words, but enabled them with his silence. He didn't disinvite his mother when she made cruel comments. He didn't cut off his father when Richard ignored Harper's presence. He told himself his love was enough. It wasn't. Then Trevor happened. Nolan's business partner had always watched Harper too closely, his compliments too familiar, his hand lingering too long on her lower back at company events. When Harper politely rebuffed his advances at a corporate retreat, something dark flickered behind Trevor's smile. Careful, Harper, he'd said, voice silk over steel. You're playing in a world that eats girls like you alive. 2 weeks later, the photos appeared on Nolan's desk. Harper entering a hotel. Harper laughing with a man Nolan didn't recognize. Harper, her hand on the man's arm. Trevor's voice was sympathetic poison. I'm sorry, man. I thought you should know. Nolan's world tilted. He didn't ask Harper to explain. Didn't demand context. 3 years of his family's insinuations had planted seeds, and Trevor's lies were gasoline. The confrontation came on a night when rain lashed their penthouse windows. Who is he? Nolan's voice was ice. Harper looked up from her sketchbook, confused. Who's who? He threw the photos on the table between them. Don't lie to me. Her face drained of color. Nolan, that's not what it looks like. Then what is it? He advanced, and she stepped back. Tell me, Harper. Make me understand why my wife is sneaking into hotels with another man. He's a contractor for my firm. We were meeting about the Jensen project. Nolan, please. I should have listened to them. The words came from somewhere dark and broken inside him. You were never good enough for this life. You were exactly what they said you were. Harper's face crumpled, then hardened. Get out of my way. This is my house. Then I'll leave. She moved past him, and he let her. Pride. Stupid, poisonous pride. She packed 2 suitcases while he stood in the doorway, waiting for her to beg, to explain, to fight. She did none of those things. Just walked past him one final time, her dignity intact, her heart in pieces on his floor. The door closed. The lock clicked, and Nolan Wright became a ghost in his own life. Now 6 months later, The rain and his guilt were drowning him. A colleague had mentioned seeing Harper at a farmer's market, holding an infant. The timeline crashed into Nolan like a freight train. If she'd been pregnant when she left. Oh God, what have I done? 2 weeks ago, Trevor, drunk and bitter over a failed merger, had confessed. The photos were staged. The affair fabricated. Harper had been meeting a contractor. Period. Nolan had been too rage-blind to see he was being played. His hands shook on the wheel as Harper's coastal town appeared through the storm. Her house was small, warm-lit against the darkness. Everything his cold penthouse wasn't. He didn't deserve forgiveness. Didn't deserve answers. But if that baby was his, if Harper had endured pregnancy and birth alone because of his cruelty, he'd spend the rest of his life making it right. Or die trying. If you've ever loved someone so much it scared you, or if you've ever made a mistake that haunted you, I would love you to show some love. Drop a comment below and tell me about it. Hit that subscribe button because this story is about to shatter your heart and rebuild it. And smash the like button if you're ready to see what happens when Nolan walks through that door. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Trevor Manning had always been the kind of man who smiled with too many teeth. Nolan met him at Harvard Business School. Same fraternity, same ambitions, same ruthless drive to conquer the corporate world. They'd built Wright and Manning Capital together, turning millions into billions through calculated risks and sleepless nights. Trevor was supposed to be his brother in everything but blood. Until Harper. Nolan remembered the exact moment Trevor's interest shifted from professional to predatory. It was at their 5th anniversary gala for the firm. Harper wore emerald green that night, her natural hair swept up, her laughter genuine as she chatted with investors, wives who usually looked through her like glass. Nolan had been watching her from across the room. He was always watching her, still unable to believe she'd chosen him. When Trevor sidled up. "Your wife is remarkable," Trevor said, his gaze locked on Harper. "She is." Nolan's chest swelled with pride. Almost makes a man wonder what it would take to find someone like that. Trevor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Or steal her. Nolan had laughed it off as a joke. It wasn't. The corporate retreat in Aspen was where Trevor made his move. Harper had come reluctantly, uncomfortable with the performative bonding and forced camaraderie. On the second night, while Nolan was trapped in a late-night strategy session, Trevor cornered her by the lodge's fireplace. "You know, Harper, you could do so much better than playing housewife to Nolan's ambitions." His voice was low, intimate. His hand found her lower back. Harper stepped away smoothly. "I'm not playing at anything, Trevor. And I'd appreciate it if you kept your hands to yourself. Come on." He moved closer, alcohol sharp on his breath. "We both know you married him for the money. Why not enjoy the benefits? I could give you things Nolan's too blind to see you need." "What I need," Harper said, her voice diamond-hard, "is for you to back the hell off." She walked away, leaving Trevor standing alone, his ego bleeding. Nobody rejected Trevor Manning. Revenge started small, a whispered comment to Vivian about Harper's spending habits, a casual mention to Richard about her inappropriate friendship with a male colleague. Seeds planted in soil already poisoned against her. But Nolan defended Harper every time. Frustrating. Infuriating. Trevor needed something concrete. Something that would shatter Nolan's faith beyond repair. He hired a private investigator, not to find dirt, but to manufacture it. The photographer was expensive but discreet. He followed Harper for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity. When Harper met with James Mitchell, a contractor from her architecture firm, to review blueprints for the Jensen luxury development, the photographer was ready. The images were masterfully deceptive. Harper entering the hotel where the client meeting was held, cropped to remove the other attendees. Harper laughing at something James said, framed to look intimate rather than professional. Harper's hand on James's arm, a casual gesture distorted into something damning. Trevor delivered the photos personally to Nolan's office, his expression carefully crafted into sympathetic concern. "Man, I hate being the one to show you this." Trevor slid the envelope across Nolan's desk. "But if someone were doing this to me, I'd want to know." Nolan's hands trembled as he opened it. His face drained of color, then flushed with rage. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Trevor leaned back, watching his work take effect. I'm sorry, Nolan. I know how much you love her. But maybe your parents were right. Maybe she was never. Get out. Nolan's voice was barely a whisper. Nolan. I said get out. Trevor left, satisfaction warm in his chest. By evening, he knew Nolan's marriage would be ashes. Nolan stared at the photos for 2 hours, his mind a war zone. Every insecurity his family had ever planted bloomed like toxic flowers. She married you for money. She's not one of us. Girls like that don't love men like you. They love what you can give them. He dismissed those voices for 3 years. But the photos were right there, undeniable. His hands shook as he poured whiskey he didn't taste. Rage built like a tsunami, not just at Harper's supposed betrayal, but at himself for being fool enough to believe someone like her could genuinely love someone like him. By the time Harper came home, Nolan was gasoline waiting for a match. Who is he? The question exploded the moment Harper set down her portfolio. She looked up, confused, and Nolan's heart fractured at how innocent she appeared. Was it all an act? He threw the photos between them like accusations. Harper's face transformed, confusion to understanding to horror. Nolan, no, that's James Mitchell. He's the contractor on the Jensen project. We had a client meeting. A client meeting in a hotel? Venom dripped from every word. Yes. The developer was staying there. Nolan, please look at me. I am looking at you. He advanced, and she retreated, her back hitting the wall. I'm looking at a liar. A cheat. Everything they said you were. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Who said? Your mother? Your father? They've wanted me gone since day one. Maybe they were protecting me. The words ripped from somewhere primal. Maybe they saw what I was too blinded by lust to see, that you never loved me. You loved what I could give you. That's not true. Then explain the photos, Harper. Explain them. I'm trying to. Her voice broke. But you won't listen. You've already decided I'm guilty. She was right. He had. You know what the worst part is? Nolan's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. I defended you. To everyone. My parents, my colleagues, Trevor. I burned every bridge for you. And this is how you repay me. Trevor. Harper's eyes sharpened through her tears. Trevor showed you these? Don't try to deflect. He came on to me in Aspen, Nolan. I rejected him. Convenient story. Harper flinched like he'd struck her. Something in her eyes died right there. The hope, maybe, that love could survive this. You don't believe me. It wasn't a question. Give me a reason to. She stared at him for a long moment, tears streaming, chest heaving. Then her spine straightened. I shouldn't have to. If you loved me, really loved me, you'd know I'd never do this to us. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I didn't. Her scream echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Then quieter, broken. But you'll never believe that. Because deep down, you've always thought I wasn't good enough for you. Just like they said. That's not. Yes, it is. Harper moved past him toward their bedroom. I'll pack my things. You can have your perfect life back. The one where everyone agrees with you and nobody challenges your assumptions. Harper. Don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. You want to know what the worst part is, Nolan? Not that you don't believe me. That you didn't even ask. You saw those photos and you decided. That tells me everything I need to know about what you really think of me. She disappeared into the bedroom. Nolan stood frozen, part of him screaming to follow her, to apologize, to believe her. But his pride, his hurt, his family's poison, it all held him in place. 30 minutes later, she emerged with 2 suitcases. Her eyes were dry now, her face composed. She'd never looked more beautiful or more unreachable. I hope she was worth it, Harper said at the door. Who? Whoever you end up with next. I hope she fits perfectly into your world. I hope your parents love her. I hope she never challenges you or makes you uncomfortable or forces you to choose. Harper's hand rested on the doorknob. I hope she makes you happy in ways I apparently couldn't. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a coffin ceiling. Nolan stood in the empty penthouse, surrounded by evidence of their life together. Her books, her sketches, her coffee mug still on the counter, and felt the first crack of doubt. What if he was wrong? He was too proud to chase that thought, too angry to investigate, too broken to admit that maybe, just maybe, he destroyed the best thing in his life over lies. A week later, Harper called his office. His assistant, instructed by Nolan in a moment of petty cruelty, told her he was unavailable. Harper never called again. What Nolan didn't know, Harper had discovered she was pregnant 3 days after leaving. 3 weeks along. The timeline unmistakable. She'd picked up the phone a dozen times. Put it down 11. Harper found the coastal town by accident, or maybe by providence. She'd driven aimlessly for hours after leaving the penthouse, tears blurring the highway until exhaustion forced her to pull over. The sun was rising over a small town called Crescent Bay, painting the ocean in shades of amber and rose. Something about the light made her stop the car and breathe. 3 days later, she signed a lease on a tiny cottage 2 blocks from the shore. The architecture firm that hired her was modest compared to her previous position, but they didn't care about her last name or her connections. They cared that she could design beautiful, functional spaces. Her boss, an older woman named Patricia, took one look at Harper's portfolio and hired her on the spot. Fresh start. Patricia asked gently, seeing something haunted in Harper's eyes. Something like that. Harper didn't tell her about the pregnancy test she'd taken that morning. The 2 pink lines that had made her sink to the bathroom floor, sobbing into her hands. Telling Nolan should have been simple. But every time Harper reached for her phone, she remembered his face twisted with disgust, his voice calling her a liar, a cheat. Everything they said you were. She dialed his office anyway, hands shaking. Wright and Manning Capital. How may I direct your call? Nolan Wright, please. This is Harper. Mr. Wright is unavailable. The assistant's voice turned glacial. He's asked not to be disturbed. It's important. Can you just tell him I called? He was very clear, Mrs. Wright. Or should I say Ms. Davis? The line went dead. Harper sat staring at her phone for 20 minutes. Pride warred with desperation. She could try again, could show up at his office, could force him to listen. But the memory of his contempt was a wall she couldn't scale. He made his choice, she told herself. And our baby deserves better than a father who believes the worst of her mother. She never called again. Pregnancy, alone, was a special kind of torture. Harper attended prenatal appointments in sterile rooms where other women brought partners who rubbed their backs and argued over baby names. She assembled a crib at 2 in the morning, instructions blurry through tears, her hands cramping on the Allen wrench. Morning sickness hit hardest during client meetings. She'd excuse herself to vomit in parking lots, then return with mints and apologies, praying nobody noticed. But there were beautiful moments too. The first flutter of movement at 16 weeks that made her gasp and press both hands to her belly. The ultrasound where she saw 10 perfect fingers and toes. The elderly woman at the grocery store who'd smiled and said, "You're glowing, dear." Harper made friends, cautiously, carefully. Patricia became a mentor and confidant. A doula named Ruth offered services at a discount, sensing Harper's financial strain. A nurse from a hospital, Maya, lived 2 doors down and brought casseroles every week. "You don't have to do this alone," Maya said gently. But Harper was alone, profoundly, achingly alone in the ways that mattered. On nights when the baby kicked and Harper's heart broke anew, she'd whisper to her growing daughter, "Your daddy doesn't know about you yet. But that doesn't mean he wouldn't love you. It just means we're complicated." She never said Nolan didn't care. She couldn't poison their daughter against a man who might never get the chance to explain. Labor came 3 weeks early, fast and brutal. Harper's water broke in the produce section of the grocery store. Maya drove her to the hospital, running red lights, while Harper breathed through contractions that threatened to split her in half. "You're doing great," Ruth coached hours later, as Harper screamed and pushed and prayed. I need," Harper sobbed, and she didn't have to say his name. Everyone knew. "You can," Maya gripped her hand. "You're the strongest woman I know." At 3:47 a.m., Marin Davis came into the world with a furious cry and dark hair plastered to her tiny skull. The nurse placed her on Harper's chest, and Harper forgot how to breathe. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered, tears streaming. "I'm your mama. I've got you. I've always got you." Marin opened her eyes, storm gray, unmistakably Nolan's, and Harper's heart shattered and mended simultaneously. "She's perfect," Ruth murmured. She was. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a rosebud mouth, and her father's eyes staring up with ancient wisdom. Harper held her daughter and mourned the man who should have been there, the man who would never know what he'd missed. Meanwhile, 300 miles away, Nolan Wright was drowning in his own private hell. His bed felt like a tomb. The penthouse echoed with Harper's absence, her laugh, her music, the smell of her coffee. He'd burned her bridges, changed the locks, instructed his assistant to block her calls. Pride, poisonous and absolute. He tried dating, desperate, pathetic attempts to prove he'd moved on. A corporate lawyer who talked about quarterly earnings during dinner. A gallery owner who kissed him in his car and tasted wrong, smelled wrong, was wrong in every molecular way. He'd end each evening alone, staring at his phone, Harper's contact information still saved. His finger would hover over the call button. He never pressed it. Work became his anesthetic. 18-hour days, international deals. Anything to avoid the penthouse where her ghost waited. Trevor praised his dedication, clapped his shoulder at board meetings, never showed a hint of guilt. Until the confession. 6 months after Harper left, Trevor got spectacularly drunk at a corporate dinner celebrating a failed merger. Nolan found him in the bathroom, tie loosened, eyes glazed. "You know what's funny?" Trevor slurred. "You threw away your marriage for nothing." Nolan's blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" "The photos, man. They weren't real. I mean, they were real photos, but not a real affair." Trevor laughed bitterly. "I staged the whole thing. Hired a photographer. Waited for her to meet that contractor. Made it look like something it wasn't." The bathroom tilted. "You're lying." "Why would I lie now? She rejected me, and I wanted her to pay. Wanted you to pay for having what I couldn't." Trevor's face twisted with ugly honesty. "But the joke's on me, right? Lost the merger, lost my wife, and you're still not happy. So what was the point?" Nolan grabbed Trevor by the collar, slammed him against the tile wall. "You destroyed my marriage over your wounded ego. She destroyed it by being too good for both of us." Nolan's fist connected with Trevor's jaw. Once. Twice. Security pulled him off before he could do real damage. He drove home in a fugue state, Trevor's confession playing on repeat. Not real. Never real. Harper was innocent. The magnitude of his mistake was an ocean, and he was drowning. For 2 weeks, Nolan searched. Private investigators, old contacts, anything. He found the coastal town, the cottage, and, through a chance comment from a former colleague, the baby. "Harper has an infant. I saw her at the farmer's market. Maybe 4 months old?" The timeline crashed through him like a wrecking ball. If Harper left 6 months ago, pregnant and alone. "Oh God," Nolan whispered to his empty penthouse. "Oh God, what have I done?" He grabbed his keys and ran. If you've stuck with this story to this point, you know this is more than just drama. This is about real pain and real consequences. Show some love and subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles, and hit that like button in appreciation for stories that dig deep. Comment below. Do you think Nolan deserves forgiveness? The door was unlocked. Nolan's hand trembled on the knob, rain streaming down his face, his heart hammering against his ribs. He should knock, should announce himself, should do anything other than what he was about to do. But desperation made monsters of good men. He pushed the door open. It banged against the inside wall, louder than thunder. Harper. Her name came out raw, broken. Water dripped from his hair onto hardwood floors, pooling around his expensive shoes in a house that cost less than his monthly car payment. And then he saw her. She stood frozen in the archway between the living room and hallway, her eyes wide with shock. She wore simple clothes, yoga pants, and an oversized sweater, her natural hair pulled back. She looked exhausted, beautiful, and utterly terrified. But none of that mattered, because in her arms, wrapped in a soft yellow blanket, was a baby. Time stopped. Nolan couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but stare at the tiny bundle pressed against Harper's chest. The infant let out a small whimper, and Harper instinctively swayed, rocking gently, her protective stance unmistakable. "Nolan." Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes locked on the baby, searching for answers in features he could barely see. Dark hair peeked from under the blanket's edge. One tiny fist had escaped, curled tight against Harper's collarbone. "I heard." His throat closed. He tried again. "I heard you had a baby." Harper's grip tightened protectively. "You need to leave." "Is she mine?" The question burst out, desperate and afraid. "Harper, please, is she mine?" Tears glistened in Harper's eyes. She looked down at the baby, then back at him, and something in her expression cracked. "Her name is Marin." Not an answer, but an invitation. Nolan took a trembling step forward, then another. Harper didn't retreat, though every muscle in her body looked coiled to run. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see what his heart already knew. The baby stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Storm gray, the exact shade as his own, as his grandmother's in the old portraits hanging in his childhood home. "Oh my God." The words fell from his lips like prayers. "Oh my God." "Yes." Harper's voice broke. A single tear slid down her cheek. "She's your daughter, Nolan." His knees nearly buckled. He reached out instinctively, his hand hovering near the baby, near Marin, asking silent permission. Harper hesitated, her jaw tight, then nodded slightly. Nolan's palms settled gently on Marin's back. Even through the blanket, he could feel her warmth, her tiny body rising and falling with each breath. She turned her head slightly at his touch, those gray eyes finding his face. Something profound shifted in his chest. This wasn't abstract anymore. This was his daughter, his flesh and blood, a tiny person he'd helped create and then abandoned before she even existed in his awareness. "Hello, Marin," he whispered, his voice shattering. A tear escaped, then another. I'm your dad." Marin's tiny fingers flexed toward him, and Nolan broke completely. Sobs racked his body as he stood there in Harper's living room, one hand on his daughter's back, the other covering his face. "I'm so sorry," he choked out. "Harper, I'm so goddamn sorry." Harper watched him cry, her own tears falling silently. Part of her wanted to turn away, to deny him this moment. But another part, the part that had loved this man desperately, recognized real remorse when she saw it. "You should sit down," she said quietly. They moved to the couch, Nolan collapsing onto it like a puppet with cut strings. Harper sat beside him, close but not touching, Marin between them like a bridge across 6 months of silence. "When did you find out?" Harper asked. "About her?" 2 weeks ago. About Trevor's lies." Nolan's jaw clenched. 6 months too late. He confessed at a corporate dinner. The photos were staged. The affair was fiction. You were telling the truth, and I was too much of a coward to believe you. Harper's breath caught. "Trevor staged it?" "All of it. Because you rejected him in Aspen, and he wanted revenge." Nolan turned to face her fully, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "I destroyed us over lies, Harper. I chose pride and poison over the woman I loved. And you paid the price. We both did." Harper looked down at Marin, who was watching them with solemn curiosity. "But she paid the most. She'll never get back the time you missed." The words were a knife, precise and deserved. "I know." Nolan's voice was barely audible. "I know I can't fix that. Can't undo it. But Harper, please." His hand reached toward hers, stopping just short of contact. "Let me try. Let me be her father. Let me prove I'm not the man who threw you out." Harper stared at his outstretched hand. 6 months ago, she would have died to hear these words. Now, with their daughter sleeping between them, everything was more complicated. "She has your eyes," Harper whispered instead of answering. "She has your strength. Nolan's gaze moved from Harper to Marin and back. I can see it already. Marin chose that moment to yawn, a tiny, perfect expression of infant exhaustion. Despite everything, both parents smiled. She needs to eat soon, Harper said softly. And we need to talk. Really talk. I'll stay as long as you'll let me. It wasn't a request. It was a vow. Harper nodded slowly, then did something that surprised them both. She shifted Marin slightly and guided Nolan's arms into position. Support her head. Just like that. Nolan cradled his daughter for the first time, and his world realigned. This tiny person, this miracle he'd almost lost forever, she was everything. More than money, more than pride, more than the poisonous approval of people who didn't matter. Marin settled against his chest, her small hand fisting in his wet shirt, and Nolan understood what he'd been missing. Not just his daughter, his family, his home, his heart. Nolan didn't leave that night, or the next. Harper set him up in the guest room, a space barely larger than a closet, with a twin bed and a window overlooking the street. It was nothing like the king-sized luxury he was accustomed to, but Nolan had never slept better. Because down the hall, his daughter was breathing. And Harper, wounded, wary Harper, had given him a chance he didn't deserve. The first week was awkward choreography. Nolan learned to move through Harper's small cottage without invading her space. He woke at 2 a.m. to Marin's cries and stumbled into the nursery, only to find Harper already there, exhausted but efficient. "I've got her," Harper murmured, not meeting his eyes. "Let me help." Nolan's voice was soft. "Please. I want to learn." Harper hesitated, then stepped aside. Diapers probably wet. Wipes are in the caddy. Nolan fumbled through his first diaper change, while Marin screamed her displeasure. His hands shook, the tabs stuck to themselves, and he nearly put the diaper on backward before Harper's hand covered his. "Like this," she guided gently. Their fingers brushed. Harper pulled away, as if burned. But the next night, when Marin woke crying, Harper stayed in bed, testing him, trusting him. Nolan changed Marin, warmed a bottle, and rocked her back to sleep while singing off-key lullabies he'd learned from YouTube videos. When he returned to his room, Harper was standing in the hallway, watching. "You're getting better," she said quietly. "I'm trying." He met her gaze. "I'll keep trying, for as long as it takes." Something in Harper's expression softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. 3 weeks into his new life, Nolan's carefully constructed peace shattered with a knock at the door. Harper was giving Marin a bath. Nolan answered, still wearing the casual clothes that had replaced his designer suits, jeans and a faded t-shirt that made him look almost human. He froze. Vivian and Richard stood on the porch, looking as out of place as diamonds in a discount bin. His mother's perfectly styled hair didn't move in the ocean breeze. His father's expression was carved from granite. "Mother. Dad." Nolan blocked the doorway instinctively. "What are you doing here? You've been unreachable for 3 weeks." Vivian's voice was tight. "We were concerned." "I'm fine." "Are you?" Richard's gaze swept past him, taking in the modest interior. "Because from where we're standing, you've abandoned your responsibilities to play house with. Finish that sentence, and you'll leave in an ambulance." Nolan's voice was deadly quiet. Vivian's eyes widened. "Nolan." "No." He stepped forward, forcing them back. "You don't get to do this. You poisoned my marriage with your prejudice and your cruelty. And I let you. That ends now." "We heard about the baby," Vivian said softly. "Is it true?" Before Nolan could answer, Harper appeared behind him, Marin wrapped in a towel against her chest. She'd heard everything. "Her name is Marin," Harper said, her chin lifted. "And yes, she's Nolan's daughter." The silence was deafening. Then Vivian did something Nolan had never seen. She stepped forward, her composed mask cracking. May I see her?" Harper's grip tightened protectively. Nolan moved to her side, his hand finding the small of her back, a united front. "Why should she let you?" Nolan asked his mother. "You made Harper's life hell. You called her a gold digger, questioned her character, treated her like she was beneath us. Why would we trust you with our daughter?" Vivian's eyes filled with tears, real tears that shocked both Nolan and Harper. "Because I was wrong," she whispered. "Because I let fear and prejudice make me cruel to a woman who only wanted to love my son. Because I'm looking at my granddaughter and I'm realizing what I almost lost." Richard cleared his throat, uncomfortable with emotion. "We owe you an apology, Harper." "A real one." "Several," Nolan corrected coldly. "Several," Richard agreed. He met Harper's gaze directly for the first time. "I judged you based on nothing but my own narrow worldview. That was unforgivable. But I'm asking you to forgive it anyway." Harper looked at Nolan, a silent question in her eyes. He squeezed her waist gently. "Your choice." After a long moment, Harper shifted Marin slightly. "Come in. But if either of you says one cruel word, you're out. Permanently." "Understood," Vivian said quickly. They moved into the living room. Vivian sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes never leaving Marin. Harper approached slowly, then lowered the baby into her grandmother's arms. Vivian gasped. Oh, she's perfect," Richard finished, leaning over his wife's shoulder. His voice cracked. "She has your eyes, Nolan, and your grandmother's smile." Marin stared up at these new faces, then reached up with one tiny hand. Vivian offered her finger, and Marin gripped it with surprising strength. "Hello, darling," Vivian whispered, tears streaming freely now. "I'm your grandmother, and I promise I will be better for you than I was for your mother." Harper's hand found Nolan's. He laced their fingers together, holding tight. Richard touched Marin's soft hair with unexpected gentleness. "She's extraordinary." "She is," Nolan agreed. "And she deserves better than the family I grew up in. She deserves acceptance and love without conditions. Can you give her that?" Vivian looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Yes. And Harper deserves that too." She turned to Harper, still cradling Marin. "I was threatened by you. By your independence, your talent, your ability to make my son happy in ways I never understood. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I'm saying it anyway. I'm so very sorry." Harper's vision blurred. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, always with vindication and anger. But watching her daughter bridge the gap between her and Nolan's family, she felt only exhaustion and cautious hope. "Thank you," Harper whispered. "It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Before we continue, I want to appreciate you for making it far into the story. And I ask a favor from you. Show some love to the video by hitting that like button. And subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss more videos just like this one." 3 months after that first stormy night, Nolan proposed again. Not with a diamond ring this time. Not with champagne or photographers or any of the performative wealth that had defined their first engagement. He proposed with blueprints. Harper found them spread across her kitchen table one Sunday morning, weighted down by her coffee mug. Detailed architectural drawings of a house, their house. Every line was intentional. Every space designed with her input from late-night conversations he'd been secretly cataloging. A studio with north-facing windows for her artwork. A nursery that opened onto a garden. A kitchen large enough for family dinners, but intimate enough for midnight feedings. A wraparound porch facing the ocean. "What is this?" Harper whispered, tracing the lines with trembling fingers. Nolan stood in the doorway, Marin asleep against his shoulder. "It's us. If you'll have me." He crossed to her, his free hand covering hers on the blueprints. "I can't give you back the time I stole. Can't undo the pain I caused. But I can build you a future, Harper. Build us a future. If you'll let me." Tears blurred her vision. "Nolan." "Marry me again," he breathed against her temple. "Not because of money or expectations or what anyone else thinks. Marry me because we're supposed to be a family. Because I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. Because our daughter deserves to see her parents choose each other every single day." Harper turned in his arms, careful not to wake Marin between them. "You hurt me. I know. You believed lies over me. I know." His eyes glistened. "And I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'll never make that mistake again." Harper Davis, Will you build a life with me? She looked at the blueprints, then at Marin sleeping peacefully, then at this man who'd shattered her and was now painstakingly piecing them both back together. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. They married on the beach at sunset, 6 months after Nolan had stormed back into her life. No 500-person guest list. No ice sculptures or designer gowns. Just 20 people who mattered. Patricia and Ruth and Maya, Vivian and Richard, who'd earned their place through consistent effort and genuine change, and Marin in a tiny white dress, reaching for the waves. Harper wore simple cream linen that moved in the ocean breeze. Nolan wore linen too, his feet bare in the sand, his eyes never leaving his bride. I was lost before you, Nolan said when it was time for vows. His voice carried over the sound of surf. You found me, loved me, challenged me to be better. Then I broke us. Broke you. But you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve, and I promise you this. I will spend every day earning it. I will choose you. I will believe you. I will build you a life worthy of the love you've given me. Harper's voice shook as she spoke. You destroyed me. But you also showed me what real change looks like. You proved that love isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up and trying again. I choose you, Nolan. Not because you're perfect, but because you're mine. And I'm yours. Always have been. When they kissed, Marin clapped her tiny hands, and their small gathering erupted in laughter and tears. That night, in the cottage that had become their temporary sanctuary, Nolan carried Harper over the threshold like he should have done the first time. We're married, Harper breathed against his mouth. We're married, he echoed, kicking the bedroom door closed. They came together with the desperation of people who'd almost lost everything. Nolan's hands relearned the map of her body. The new softness motherhood had brought, the strength in her spine, the way she gasped when he kissed the hollow of her throat. I missed you, he murmured against her skin. God, Harper, I missed you. I'm here. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. I'm right here. They made love like the world was ending and beginning simultaneously. Every touch was a reclamation. Every kiss a vow renewed. In the tangle of sheets and whispered promises, they rebuilt what had been broken. Not perfect, but stronger for having shattered. After, Harper lay with her head on Nolan's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. I'm pregnant, she whispered into the darkness. Nolan went still. What? 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. She tilted her face up to see his reaction. I was afraid to tell you. Afraid it was too soon, that you'd. He kissed her quiet, deep, claiming, full of joy. I'm here this time. For every moment, every appointment, every midnight craving. I'm not missing a second. Harper's eyes filled with happy tears. It's a boy. A boy. Nolan's hand splayed across her still flat stomach with reverence. Marin's getting a brother. We're having a family. We already have one. He pulled her closer. We just keep making it better. 2 years later, they stood in the completed house Nolan had designed, watching Marin chase her baby brother across their garden, while Vivian and Richard helped Harper plant tomatoes. We made it, Harper said softly, leaning into Nolan's embrace. We did. He kissed her hair. Against all odds. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messier, harder, more painful than fiction. But it was real. And it was theirs. They'd learned that love isn't fragile, it's forged in fire. That forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing a person can offer. That family isn't just blood. It's choice, made daily, with intention and grace. Marin ran to them, her little brother toddling behind. Daddy, Mama, look. They looked. They saw. They held their children close and knew that every mistake, every tear, every moment of doubt had led them here. To home, to wholeness, to forever. This is what real love looks like, messy, broken, rebuilt stronger than before. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do 3 things. First, smash that like button. Second, drop a comment and tell me, what's the biggest lesson you're taking from Nolan and Harper's story? Third, subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles and hit that notification bell, because every week, We bring you stories about redemption, second chances, and the kind of love that survives anything. Remember this: the strongest love isn't the one that never breaks. It's the one that breaks and chooses to heal. Don't give up on the people worth fighting for. This is Mr. William Chronicles. I'll see you in the next story.